Good morning, everybody. I know it's July 6th, but I promise you the fireworks are not over yet because I'm sitting here with two explosive men business leaders. Matt, Bill, how you doing this morning?
I just want to know how long you practiced that one. When did you write that great intro?
I thought about it this morning as I was setting up.
That was very good.
Yeah, the fireworks are still coming. Well, thanks, Evan. Thank you all for joining us, and belated Happy 4th. Hope you guys had a safe and enjoyable weekend celebrating our nation's independence. I'm always humbled by this day. You know, it's so amazing when you think about the sacrifices made by those who signed the Declaration of Independence and embarked on this great experiment called the United States of America. It's kind of amazing when you think about the hardships they suffered, right? You know, and we say the founding fathers, but I guarantee you none of those founding fathers were doing it that were married, did it without their wives, because the hardships that were brought upon them were just incredible. And I think that, you know, we should probably think about them as the founding families, because there was just so much that they suffered from being targeted and killed to losing all their wealth, and it's just humbling. So thank you to them, and welcome back from an incredible weekend.
Yep, absolutely.
Good to see you this weekend, Matt. And we talked a little bit this morning about what we're doing today and continuing on with negotiation. We started talking about negotiation last week and the power of negotiation, just laying some of the fundamentals. We talked about how important it is to remember it's not personal, how important it is to lean into questions so that we don't need to have all the answers. We just need a couple of the right questions, right?
Yep.
And today we want to pick up there and continue on. We encourage you who are watching and those who might watch this replay on LinkedIn or YouTube, please submit questions and anything you might have, be it negotiation or any other topic. But over today and next week, we're going to be focused on negotiation again. Please submit those questions to us at Evan@Tellerico Group, and we'll be sure to answer those on air and address those with you. But this is going to be one of my favorite topics today about negotiation. That's gives and gets, right? We talked a little bit about gives and gets last week and teased with that, but gives and gets are really the foundation to any good negotiation, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And what I wanted to start out with today, too, as well, is that negotiations are to be mutually beneficial. I think a lot of people, when you bring up negotiation, it's about winning and losing. I got them to the lowest price as a buyer, or as someone that's selling something, I got a lot of money out of them. So, you know, first things first, negotiations, they're meant to be mutually beneficial, not a winner, not a loser, because if there is, that's not a long-lasting partnership. And at some point, there are going to be cracks in the foundation. And Bill, just real quick, I don't want to go backwards, but we mentioned sharpen the pencil last week. Yeah. And there's actually a story, someone that I had a one-to-one with later that day said, I cannot believe it. Someone said, hey, can you sharpen your pencil? Literally a couple hours after we did last week's show. And what was interesting about this, because we talk a lot of times about assuming, right, and asking questions. And she said, you know, you've coached us up enough that sharpen the pencil. What's that mean? Sharpen the pencil, just kind of being dumbfounded. And there was an opportunity there that she could assume that it meant pricing. But in this particular case, sharpen the pencil meant we have to tighten up the scope when the proposal gets passed on, you know, and goes up top to corporate or, you know, wherever it was going. So I thought that was a great lesson in, as we said, asking questions, but also not assuming that sharpen the pencil is always just about price. So sorry about jumping in.
That's a great example.
With gives and gets.
Well, it's funny, you know, Matt, the technique Matt demonstrated there to get clarity was a technique called mirroring. And when someone says sharpen the pencil, you're going to need to sharpen the pencil. Our response, one of our responses could be sharpen the pencil with a questioning tone, right? Just the last three words they said with a questioning tone, sharpen the pencil, and people are going to elaborate, right? They'll start to tell you, and in this case, they'll say, yeah, you know, we got to tighten up the scope versus, oh, we need you to take 20% off. And when we don't do that, when we don't confirm and clarify, in our mind, our happy years tell us, oh, or our money weakness and our money fear tells us, oh, it's all about price. And you call the boss, boss man, we need to take 20% off. And we're negotiating against ourselves at that point versus trying to get real clarity onto what needs to happen for this to move forward. So mirroring the technique of just repeating the last 3 words that someone said back in a questioning tone gives them that freedom to be clear. Because remember, people are reluctant to tell us everything until we give them that freedom to speak. So that technique is very freeing for the hearer when we say something like sharpen the pencil.
Well, they hear the question that's on their heart.
That's right.
And that actually, did that come from the hostage negotiators that we saw?
That's a technique we discovered from a gentleman, Chris Vox, I believe.
Yeah.
Who wrote a book, Never Split the Difference. Great book on
really
negotiating. Cool. Yeah, a lot of interesting techniques. And he was a former FBI hostage negotiator, and shared some of his techniques over the years, which have some applicability to us in business and in life.
Mm-hmm. So anyways, gives and gets. Sorry about that.
Didn't you have an experience, speaking of negotiating against yourself, didn't you experience somebody negotiating against themselves this weekend?
Well, I don't know if it was a negotiation, but I found it interesting. Obviously,
by way of reminder, Matt and Paige, his lovely wife, have a newborn baby, Lucy, who's going to be a year old at the end of July. Mm-hmm. And Lucy is adorable, and Paige is a wonderful mom who is still in mama bear mode and wants to make sure she keeps her baby safe and alive every day, which sometimes means she shouldn't be with dad. Right?
Thank you for that disclaimer. That probably makes her sound a lot better. But Paige loves being with Lucy, doesn't get separated very often, and she had to run some errands, and thinks Dad's going to give Lucy fireworks and feed her chocolate or whatever, or forget her in the washing machine or something.
She was expecting to come home and have Matt have firecrackers in her mouth saying, "Watch this."
But anyway, she asked me to babysit and be home alone for a couple hours, and it was really interesting because I said one word in the entire exchange that probably went 3 to 5 minutes, and she said, "Can you watch Lucy?" Sure. Well, I don't know if I should go, or should I do this errand? No, I don't know. Well, when I come back, you can get this, or you can do this, and this went on for about 5 minutes. And what was so interesting about it, I said one word, and by the end of it, I was getting stuff that I didn't even know. I mean, it's just my job to be a parent to watch.
Yeah.
And she's like, "Oh yeah, you could do this, or I'll do this for you."
You could go golfing tomorrow with your
I was like, this is unbelievable.
And you said one word.
I simply said yes. And so, although it's a little bit out of context, it reminded me of not only how you negotiate against yourself, but you feel the need to fill. You feel the need to talk, or you feel the need, after you name something, that you water it down a little bit. And we see that in proposal draft reviews. Mm-hmm. Whenever we're coaching the proposal draft review and the price comes last, the price is something that's hard hitting. It stands alone on its own. And I see salespeople for the first time when they're going through it, it comes to the price page, and the price will be $2,000. But and they keep going and talking, and all the person is doing is looking at the price. The buyer is totally zoned out. So anyways, that was a long rant, but I found it really interesting, and it reminded me of negotiation with Paige that I sure got a heck of a lot for saying one word.
Yes. Yeah, that's great. And it plays out. It's funny how these things play out in our personal life as well as our sales or our professional life. And, negotiations, Matt pointed out something I think it's valuable to know. So many sales processes, they'll say, here you start with engage, or you do this and you go through all these things. And they actually, we meet clients all the time that have their beginning sales process that has a negotiation phase in it. Why? Right? Why have a negotiation phase? We don't believe there is a negotiation phase. Number one, we believe that we're negotiating from hello. We start that at the beginning. And negotiation, the way we frame it, is just learning. So the more we discover, the more we learn about process, the more their buying process, the more we learn about what's important to them More we are able to separate needs and wants as we move along, that's negotiation, right? We shouldn't just ignore everything, get to a point, be like, okay, now we're ready to move forward. How are we going to beat each other up? No, that's not building partnerships. That's not building value. We start negotiations at the beginning by just flushing out what's important. That's negotiation. And through that process, even in a proposal draft review, when I go through a proposal draft review with a client or a prospect, I don't have the pricing page in what I share with them. If it's in person, we put together our first 3, 4, 5 pages, whatever it might be, of the scope of work. We walk through that with them. And oftentimes you'll see people flip-flop. And I say, it's not in there.
And that's really scary for a lot of salespeople. So how often does someone say, well, where's the pricing? Or they're ticked off that you had a proposal draft review without the pricing? Because that's a big hurdle when we start talking about that. And maybe in PDRs, in an industry, you can't have the pricing because it might be a little bit more on the transactional side. But we talk about them not seeing it until we show up, not emailing it prior to. Yeah. So just, how often are people upset about that?
Never. And what I always will say to someone is, it's not in there. And they'll say, what do you mean? So I have the pricing page over here, but until we get through the scope and agree that that's right, this is meaningless. And they're always like, oh, okay. I mean, I've never had somebody push back and say, no, give me the pricing. They're right. It makes sense because there's a reason why we're not giving them pricing up front. Because if we're really doing our job, if we embrace servant sales, as we talk about, right? We've all heard about servant leadership where you put the other's needs ahead, we lift them up, we focus on them. We believe in servant sales where we're putting the needs of the other person ahead of ours, ahead of our quota, right? Remember, our quota is not their problem. So the more we put their needs ahead and we give them a reason and say, well, how do I know the scope's right? Why would I give you pricing until we both agree on the scope? Makes sense. And then I have the pricing page with us whenever we're done and they go, yes. And how often, Matt, have we walked into a room where we have our scope and somebody's like, you know what, you have this down as only 2. We want more. We want 3. Like, oh.
Or I was thinking about it over the weekend or since the last time we were together. I talked, with the executive board and, we think we need to double down a little bit more.
Yeah. And you get that in the scope. And now when you come back to pricing, it's mutually crafted. So these agreements, when we have mutually crafted agreements, they're all good. People don't push back. They understand there's a reason for it. But to your point, that starts earlier in the process than just give me a discount. Yeah. And when we get people to agree to the scope and then we share the price, it becomes a little more difficult for them to push back on price because what are they going to say? That's more than I expected. All right, tell me more. Or more than you expected. And they give you more, right? And they tell you why. You say, okay, based on what? Well, current guys at this, and this is okay. And if I recall, in our first 6 conversations that we've gone through this, you've said that's not a good solution because they're failing, right? Like, yeah, you're right. Get what you pay for. And I'm not telling them, right? It's better when people discover that.
Generation effect, having them own it.
Yeah, and when we can do that, we're doing them the service of liking this because that's how we build great partnerships and don't become transactional. So one of the things to make sure we understand when we're in those moments, because, it's inevitable that somebody's going to ask you for something. I know a guy like that, by the way. Do you know a guy like that has to ask people for more or tries to
yes.
get? Yeah, it's me. And every time I walk into I tell people, I preface it when I'm buying something, I say to them, look, I can't help myself. I just need to get something. Like it could be a Tootsie Roll.
I literally walk away when we're in stores together because it infuriates me that, an example, we went to, what was it, the deli or whatever the other day. He's literally trying meats out of the deli. And
don't ever buy a lunch meat you haven't tried before.
They're like, it's COVID. Taste. We can't do that. And he's like, really? You can't do that? And he's over there just eating these charcuterie. He had a whole charcuterie board,
Didn't they give me a piece, though?
They did.
Yes.
You'll never get it if you don't ask.
Ask with confidence, right?
Yep.
Ask like you deserve it. But it's about our gives and gets. So what are your gives and gets? And these are things we need to know before we're asked. So if you don't know what your gives and gets are, I would encourage you to sit down and write them out, right? What are the things that are important to you? What are the things you're willing to give away? Is it price? I don't like giving away price. And the reason I don't like giving away price is, number one, I think we're fair. So we never go into, for us and for our clients, we don't encourage this either. We never go into a situation artificially inflating pricing just so we can mark it down later, right? And if you're doing that, investigate, take a little look at yourself and ask why, because I think that's starting off the relationship on the wrong foot. So if we go into an opportunity and say, our fee is going to be $200,000, and we say, all right, we better mark that up by 20% because we know they're going to want a discount, and you mark it up to $240, and they ask you for a 10% discount, and you give it to them. Well, now you're overcharging. So why? It's just not fair. And then if somebody says, can you give me 20%? And you say yes, I'm thinking they're overcharging me. I respect people that say, no, I can't do that. That's the price. It's a fair price. So don't build up just to take away price. I don't think that's starting the relationship off on the right foot, and it's disingenuous. But know what your gives and gets are, and if a give is something like, I don't know, an extra whatever. So you do something for your client 12 times a year, they ask for it 13. Okay, maybe is that a reasonable give? Is it payment terms? Oftentimes people push back on payment terms and ask for them. Why do most people ask for payment terms? For the same reason I asked to taste the roast beef, right? Because they can. By the way, I didn't buy the roast beef because I didn't like it, which is why you always ask for the taste. But but why do people ask? They ask because they can. It's not because it's a need. So our job is to flush out needs and wants. So if we're willing to give away payment terms, and let's just say we're willing to go from 30 to 60 days on payment terms. First of all, do you know what that cost you? Do you know what giving away an extra 30 days in payment terms costs the business? It depends on your business, but it's usually about 2%.
Yeah, a couple points.
Right? That's because it's the cost of cash. Do you have to borrow to make payroll? It depends on how tight the cash flow is in the business. If you're flush with cash and you don't care, great. That's your idiosyncrasy of your business. Know it and own it. But we shouldn't just be giving away things until we know why. So when somebody says, hey, can you give me 60-day payment terms? Help me understand why. When I go and tell my boss that we need to go 60-day payment terms, what would I tell him? What should I tell her? What's the reason why? When she wants to know why we're giving you an extra 30 days, help me explain your business flow, your cash flow to her so that she understands why we need to make this investment, right? Because that's what it is. It's an investment. So ask, find out. And if they tell you, I just hate 30-day payment terms, that's now, if we're willing to give that to them, and that's a want, that's a big give. So we better get a big get. What's the get we're getting for that? It's got to be something.
And I think the get is usually for us, and make sure that we have it, clarity on what happens next. That is critical. That's extremely important.
And more than just clarity, I would offer commitment. Right.
Yep, good point.
Yeah.
Good
so
point.
if they say, well, here's what happens. Okay. And what day will that happen by?
When should I expect to get the contract? I see a lot in our travels. I see a lot of verbals fall through, just because we coach enough people in various industries. People stop once they get the verbal. It's warm and fuzzy, but okay, when do we expect that? Oh, by the way, if we don't have it by Thursday, is it cool if I call you Tuesday? Right? Yeah. Let's get something on the calendar.
Yeah, and I think that, we go back to clear next steps. When somebody says you'll have it by Thursday at noon, say, great, why don't we set up a call for Thursday at 11 just to make sure everything's in order. This way, if there's a hiccup, we're still on track.
Yeah.
Right? And by the way, when people give you clarity, I always go back to, I don't know if I told the story last week about Caterpillar, and I tell it sometimes too often. But when I learned the importance of commitment on dates was when I signed a deal with Caterpillar at the end of Q2. Back in a former life when I was selling software, I received a notification on like June 30th that we had it. My guy called me. He's like, Bill, congratulations. Everything's ready to go. We're looking forward to moving. We're looking forward to working with you guys. I said, oh, great. I said, you going to be able to fax that over today? He goes, no, sorry, Tom has to sign that. I said, okay, what's going on with Tom? And we're just getting ready to enter into a long 4th of July weekend. Tom was in France. And this is in the days before electronic signatures and, sign online and the whole deal. Like somebody actually had to come back from France and sign my paper. And it was never so humiliating to walk into my boss and say, so good news, we won the big Caterpillar deal that's going to make our quarter. Bad news, he's in France and we're not getting it till July 6th. Ironically, today's July 6th. And that was miserable. So clarity and commitment on when we're going to get something. I should have done a better job asking about that earlier in the quarter and saying, oh, by the way, the guy that signs, where will he be physically? And for you, it's going to be, oh, by the way, that person has to sign. What could get in the way of them signing by Friday? So our gets might be commitment and clarity on what's going to happen next. Often overlooked gets, marketing support. One of the greatest things you can get for giving something away, whether it's payment terms, whether it's 3% in price, whatever it is you have to give away, make it meaningful. And you think about what would be very meaningful, what's more important, what's more meaningful or helpful than marketing support. So I've asked for in the past, and I've seen others ask for support at conferences. So we're going to give you this discount, or we're going to give you this extension, we're going to give you this pricing payment term extension. There's a conference coming up next year. You're a well-respected member of this board or this conference. Would you present with us? And we've had that. We've had large companies present at conferences with us where we get on the agenda as a breakout session. It's huge. If you can go up and speak in front of 50 or 60 industry people that are potential targets for you with a client, with a customer saying the great things you did and how you work together, it's huge. So marketing support there, case studies that we can use and distribute, referrals. Right? What about referrals? If you know somebody that this person knows, or a specific person, it's great to ask for that and say, okay, if we give you those terms, would you be willing to help me in some way? And would you say, yeah, anything. What do you need? Say, I can't get in to see, Sally Smith over at this other place. Would you be willing to make an introduction for me and say good things about us? More often than not, somebody's going to be happy to do that if they have a relationship.
We may need to go part 3.
We are going to go part 3, I think.
Okay.
We're running out of time.
Yeah.
So referrals and introductions to others. But, I think a takeaway for today is write down your gives and gets. Know what they are. Know what you're willing to give after investigation, not just because they ask. And know what we want to get back. And be creative with the things we want to get back. It could be, holding price. It could be date of signing. Which we want to move into this week, this month, this quarter. And it could be marketing support. But negotiations don't have to be bad. Negotiations don't have to be conflict-laden. Negotiations are nothing more than good discussions between two people trying to come up with, as Matt said earlier, mutually beneficial outcomes. And when we think of it that way, when we think of it just a way to work through how do you get what you need to be happy, and how do I get what I need to be able to be a sustainable partner long term? Because remember, if somebody's asking you for a 20% discount, one thing you should be asking them is, let me ask you a question. If I were to take 20% less on every deal, how would I be able to provide you with the service you need? Right? Why are we always fighting? Let's make other people define what that looks like. Let's use questions to define, right? When somebody says, I need a 30% discount, say, oh, wow, that's interesting. When I go back and tell my boss that you need a 30% discount, what should I tell her? How will I justify that? What do you think they're going to say? They have no justification. They're going to say, well, because your competition's 30% lower. So how does that make you feel about what they're going to deliver for you? Don't fight those things. Stay calm. That's the biggest thing with negotiations. Our heart rate goes high. Our emotions start to flow. We lose our clarity. Stay calm. You're always better when you're in that calm state. We stay calm when we're asking questions, not when we're trying to find words to come up with answers. So, all right.
One of your favorite topics. I'll let you roll. I'll let you rock and roll.
All right. I think that's a wrap. We're holding everybody around too long, and we're becoming boring and redundant. So 25 minutes in. Thank you so much for your time this week. Thanks for being with us. Have a great week. Enjoy the summer out there. Be safe if you're in weather's harm way. Our friend Ron is in Florida in the eye of a tropical storm. So for everybody in Florida, you're in our thoughts and prayers. Be safe. Thank you all for being with us.
Have a good
God
week.
bless.